Yeah, I didn't like this one very much. So, Terror of Mechagodzilla basically just rehashes the same plot outline of Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, but this time it's like 1,000 times more boring. The monster fights are about 50% fewer in number, and I would say the monster fights themselves are very unspectacular and underwhelming. And I feel I feel cheated. I feel lied to. The movie's called Terror of Mechagodzilla, and the vast majority of the movie is focused on a new monster, Titanosaurus, and he's not even a cool monster. He's just like an aquatic Godzilla. He's got fins, and that's the only thing that's special about him is that he's got fins all over his body, and he uses his fins to create whirlwinds, I guess. He flaps his fins around and blows buildings to pieces all over the place. That's all he does. And Godzilla doesn't show up in the movie until you're like an hour in, and it's not even a long movie. Like, you're more than halfway through the movie by the time Godzilla finally shows up, and he doesn't even do anything. He just shows up and makes like a dramatic entrance and then disappears for a while mysteriously. It's kind of like the 2014 Godzilla movie, where you spend half of the runtime thinking, okay, I don't care about this monster thing that isn't Godzilla. What is happening? I'm not getting what I came here for. And then about halfway through, you finally see Godzilla and he roars, and it's like, oh fuck yeah, now it's gonna get started. And then it just doesn't. It's really anticlimactic and annoying. And furthermore, Mechagodzilla is just kind of being rebuilt in the background of other things happening. I mean, I think the aliens in this movie are the same ones from the previous movie. It's hard to say because in this movie they don't ever show their real faces. Like, in the previous one, whenever they died, they would revert to ape form, and in this one you never see any of them turn into an ape. I think one of them looked like he had a bunch of shit all over his face, but he didn't look like an ape. I don't know what that was about. I wasn't really paying attention. I don't know. This whole movie's plot is just garbage. It sucks. Nothing is interesting about it at all. The monster fight at the end is just like, I mean, probably the most noteworthy thing about it is just that Godzilla's fighting two monsters at once by himself. Usually, whenever he had to tag team against a couple of monsters, he would bring a friend like Anguirus or Mothra or something, someone to help him, but in this one he doesn't. It's just him, and he gets the shit kicked out of him quite a bit before he finally puts up a good fight against them. And I don't even know, like, there's a point where Mechagodzilla is just blasting him over and over again, and you get to see Godzilla catch fire for one of the very few times that happens in these early movies, which is nice. I'm trying to think. No, nothing interesting. Well, there was that one bit where Godzilla rips Mechagodzilla's head off for a second time, but this time Mechagodzilla just keeps fighting. That was kinda neat. What isn't neat is the way that Mechagodzilla is defeated in this movie, which is that Mechagodzilla is linked to this woman who's like a cyborg or an android or something, and when she dies, Mechagodzilla dies, so she kills herself in order to stop him. So Godzilla's not really the victor in that fight, he just wins by default because someone else interfered, which is pretty lame, especially considering how much the humans suck and I didn't like them. But yeah, and then after that, all that's left is taking care of Titanosaurus, and that gets over with pretty quickly because Godzilla just fire blasts him a couple of times and then throws him over a hillside and he's gone. Man, there's like a couple of funny bits where this movie defies the laws of physics, like they tend to. Godzilla gets grabbed by the snout and then lifted up in the air and tossed down a couple times. He gets kicked and then is sent flying very lazily over a hill, and that happens twice, I think, when you see Godzilla flying through the air and he just, like, it's so painfully obvious that he's being carried by wires that they didn't even try. And all in all, this movie just kind of sucks. It just kind of sucks, and I don't know. I would have appreciated at least a bit of effort on their part to try and outdo the spectacle that was the first Mechagodzilla. It just, yeah, like, he was like an instant classic, you know, instantly one of the coolest monsters ever, and they just kind of wasted him in this movie. They spent way too much time narrowly focused on this ugly sea monster I don't give a fuck about. I think the greatest highlight of this movie was, for me personally, was just hearing Titanosaurus's roar sound effect and realizing that it was the same one used by Crocomire in Super Metroid, which is one of my favorite video games of all time. And like, I'd heard before that that game uses roar sound effects from kaiju films, but I never actually took notice of any until I started watching all these kaiju films. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. It's fun to see that, just being a diehard Metroid fan. Other than that, this movie was a complete waste of time. I don't recommend that anyone watch it under any circumstances. It's just garbage. And honestly, for while I was watching it, it was really hard for me to tell if that was just something unique about this movie, that it really was more boring than the other ones. I couldn't tell if that was the case, or if it was that I was just getting sick and tired of this formula that the last several Godzilla movies have been following, where, oh no, there's some vague space alien guys who are actually like a fucking animal dressed up like a human, and they take control of an evil monster, and Godzilla has to fight to stop it. Whatever, you know. Because this is like, this is the 15th movie, which thankfully this formula should hopefully be out the window by now, because this is the final movie in the Showa series, the original Godzilla series of films. After this one, we start the Heisei era of Godzilla movies, which is considered the best era by most. I have no idea what the reasons for that are, but I guess I'm going to find out for myself, because the next movie is Godzilla 1985, which is a reboot for the series. None of the previous films are considered canon anymore, except for the first one, which is fine by me, honestly, because the first one was the best. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to finding out what the later Godzilla movies are like, because I think I'm well learned on what the classics used to be. I've seen enough. Honestly, I've seen enough of this same formula repeated over and over and over again, which, you know, I expect to see a lot more of the same. I still expect to see, you know, Godzilla against the army, and Godzilla fighting giant monsters, ones that I've seen before. I know Mechagodzilla and Ghidorah will make a return. They have to, obviously. As to what the specifics are of the content of these newer movies, I have no idea what I'm in for. So this will be exciting to watch and see. Yeah. I mean, that is what these videos are for. This isn't like an in-depth analysis of Godzilla, the character, or the series, or anything. This is just purely me spewing my thoughts into this camera, and just getting it all out there, getting it all on film, and recording everything so that I can remember it all, because I don't have anyone really to spill all my thoughts to about these movies. I mean, I do have people I could talk to about them, but I don't want to bore them by just spilling my guts out to them for hours and hours and hours about movies I just watched, especially when I'm watching multiple movies a day. So, yeah, this is mainly just for me and my friends, if they care to watch these at all. This isn't like a diehard Godzilla fan memoir. This is all just my perspective as a young adult watching these movies for the first time, discovering that it actually is possible to get into Godzilla despite not being a stupid little kid. These movies are actually pretty enjoyable sometimes, and I can't wait to see what the future holds, because honestly, you know, the Showa series, while I could easily see it having been the worst of the Godzilla series, I don't think it was overall terrible. I think, if I counted all the Godzilla movies I've seen so far under one umbrella and applied a score to them out of 10, I would give that series like a 5, probably. like it'd be somewhere in the middle, like a 5 or a 6, because I definitely enjoyed myself, but there were long stretches of just boredom and fury and rage at the sheer amount of garbage being slung at my eyeballs. But, you know, uh, maybe some of that cheese factor will have dissipated by now, maybe not. Can only hope, because Godzilla 1985 comes out 10 years after the one that I just watched. It's Godzilla went into hibernation for like a decade before being rebooted. So, yeah, I guess that's it. See you in the next one.